Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, Part 6, in which all our protagonists find the thin veneer of tranquility in their lives, tested by family and friends, with farcical and tragic consequences. Chapter 11. When Levin and Stepan Arkadyevich came to the cottage of the Mujiks with whom Levin always stayed, Veslovsky was already there. He was sitting in the middle of the cottage, holding on with both hands to a bench from which a soldier, the brother of the mistress of the house, was pulling him by the slime-covered boots and laughing his infectiously gay laugh. "I've just come. Elonte charmant. Imagine they wined me and dined me. Such bread, a wonder, delicio. And the vodka. I never drank anything tastier. And they absolutely refused to take money. And they kept saying, 'No offense,' or something." "Why take money? They were treating you as if they'd sell their vodka," said the soldier, finally pulling off the wet boot and the blackened stocking along with it. Despite the filth in the cottage, muddied by the hunter's boots and the dirty dogs licking themselves, the smell of marsh and powder that filled it, and the absence of knives and forks, the hunters drank their tea and ate dinner with a relish that only comes from hunting. Washed and clean, they went to the swept-out hay barn where the coachman had prepared beds for the masters. Though it was already dark, none of the hunters wanted to sleep. After wavering between reminiscences and stories about shooting, about dogs, about previous hunts, the conversation hit upon a subject that interested them all. Prompted by Vasenka's repeated expressions of delight at the charm of the night and the smell of the hay, at the charm of the broken cart — it seemed broken to him because of its front end had been detached — the affability of the Mujiks who had given him vodka, the dogs who lay each at its master's feet, Oblonsky told about the charm of the hunting at Malthus' place, which he had taken part in during the past summer. Malthus was a well-known railway magnate. Stepan Arkadyevich told about the marshlands this Malthus had bought up in Tver province, and how he kept them at a reserve, and what carriages, dog-carts, the hunters drove in, and the tent they set up for lunch by the marsh. "I don't understand you," said Levin, sitting up on his hay. "How is it you're not disgusted by those people? I understand that Lafitte with lunch is very agreeable, but aren't you disgusted precisely by that luxury? All those people make their money as our old tax farmers used to, in a way that earns them people's contempt. They ignore it and then use their dishonestly earned money to buy off the former contempt." "Absolutely right," responded Vasenka Veslovsky. "Absolutely. Of course, Oblonsky does it out of bonhomie, and the others say, 'Well, if Oblonsky goes there.'" "Not a bit of it." Levin sensed Oblonsky's smile as he said it. "I simply don't consider him more dishonest than any other wealthy merchant or nobleman. He and they both make money by the same hard work and intelligence." "Yes, but where's the hard work? Is it work to get a concession and resell it?" "Of course it's work. It's work in the sense that if it weren't for him and others like him, there wouldn't be any railways. But it's not the same as the work of a mujik or a scholar." "Granted, but it is work in the sense that it produces a result. Railways. But then you think railways are useless." "No, that's another question. I'm prepared to admit they're useful, but any acquisition that doesn't correspond to the labor expended is dishonest." "But who defines the correspondence?" "Acquisition by dishonest means. By cunning, said Levine, feeling that he was unable to draw a clear line between honest and dishonest. Like the acquisitions of banks, he went on. This evil, the acquisition of huge fortunes without work, as it used to be without tax farming, has merely changed its form. Le roi est mort. Vive le roi. Tax farming was no sooner abolished than railways and banks appeared, the same gain, without work. Yes, all that may be true and clever. Lie down, Grok, Stepan Arkadyevich called to the dog, who was scratching and churning up all the hay. He was obviously convinced of the justice of his theme, and therefore spoke calmly and unhurriedly. But you haven't drawn the line between honest and dishonest work. That I receive a higher salary than my chief clerk, though he knows the business better than I do, is that dishonest? I don't know. Well, then I'll tell you what you get. A surplus of 5,000 for your farm work, while the music here, our host, however hard he works, will get no more than 50 rubles. This is as dishonest as my getting more than my chief clerk, and Malthus getting more than a railway engineer. On the other hand, I see some hostile, absolutely unfounded attitude of society towards those people, and it seems to me there's envy here. No, that's unjust, said Veslovsky. There can be no envy, and there's something unclean in this whole business. No, excuse me, Levine went on. You say it's unjust that I get 5,000, and Amusia gets 50 rubles. That's true, it is unjust, and I feel it, but indeed it is. Why do we eat, drink, hunt, do nothing, while he's eternally working? Said Vasenka, apparently thinking about it clearly for the first time in his life, and therefore quite sincerely. Yes, you feel it, and yet you don't give him your property, said Stepan Arkadyevich, as if deliberately provoking Levine. Lately some sort of secret antagonism had been established between the two brothers-in-law, as if a rivalry had arisen between them, since they had married two sisters, as to whose life was set up better, and that antagonism now showed itself in the conversation, which was beginning to acquire a personal nuance. I don't give it to him because no one demands it of me, and I couldn't if I wanted to, replied Levine. And there's nobody to give it to. Give it to this music. He won't refuse. Yes, but how am I going to give it to him? Shall I go and draw up a deed of purchase with him? I don't know, but if you're convinced that you have no right. I'm not at all convinced. On the contrary, I feel that I don't have the right to give it up, that I have the responsibilities to the land and to my family. No, excuse me, but if you think this inequality is unjust, why don't you act that way? I do act, only negatively, in the sense that I'm not going to try to increase the difference of situation that exists between him and me. No, excuse me now, that is a paradox. Yes, it is a somewhat sophistic explanation, Veslovsky confirmed. Ah, it's our host, he said to the music, who opened the creaking barn door and came in. You're not asleep yet? No, what sleep? I thought you gentlemen were asleep, but then I heard you talking. I need to get a hook here. You won't bite, he added, snapping cautiously with bare feet. And where are you going to sleep? We are going to the night pasture. Ah, what a night, said Veslovsky, looking at the end of the cottage and the unharnessed cart, visible in the faint light of the afterglow, through the big frame of the now open door. Listen, those are women's voices singing, and not badly at that. Who's singing, my good man? Those are farm girls not far from here. Let's take a stroll. We're not going to fall asleep anyway. Come on, Oblonsky. If only it was possible to stay lying down and still go, Oblonsky answered, stretching. It's wonderful to be lying down. Then I'll go by myself, said Veslovsky, getting up quickly and putting his boots on. Goodbye, gentlemen. If it's fun, I'll call you. You treated me to a game, and I won't forget you. Isn't he a nice fellow? Said Oblonsky, when Veslovsky was gone and the music had closed the door behind him. Yes, nice, said Levine, still thinking about the subject of their conversation. It seemed to him that he expressed his thoughts and feelings as clearly as he could, and yet the two of them, sincere and not stupid people, had told him in one voice that he was comforting himself with sophisms. That puzzled him. There it is, my friend. It has to be one or the other. Either admit that the social present engagement is just and then defend your own rights, or admit that you enjoy certain unjust advantages, as I do, and enjoy them with pleasure. No. If it was unjust, you wouldn't be able to enjoy those benefits with pleasure. At least, I wouldn't be able to. For me, the main thing is to feel that I'm not at fault. But why not go, in fact? Said Stepan Arkadyevich, obviously weary from the strain of thinking. We won't sleep, anyway. Really, let's go. Levin did not reply. The remark he had made in the conversation about acting justly only in the negative sense preoccupied him. Can one be just only negatively? He asked himself. How strong the fresh air smells, though, Stepan Arkadyevich said, getting up. I wouldn't sleep for anything. Vasenka's on to something there. Can you hear him laughing and talking? Why not go? Come on. No, I won't go, replied Levin. Can that also be on principle? Stepan Arkadyevich said with a smile, searching for his cap in the dark. Not on principle, but why should I go? You know, you're going to make trouble for yourself, said Stepan Arkadyevich, finding his cap and standing up. Why? Don't I see how you've set things up with your wife? I heard how it's a question of the first importance with you whether or not you go hunting for 2 days. That's all well and good as an idol, but it's not enough for a whole lifetime. A man must be independent. He has his manly interests. A man must be masculine, Oblonsky said, opening the door. Meaning what? To go courting farm girls? Asked Levin. Why not if it's fun? Ça n'était pas conséquent. My wife will be none the worse for it, and I'll have fun. The main thing is to preserve the sanctity of the home. Nothing like that in the home, but don't tie your own hands. Maybe, Levin said dryly and turned over to his side. Tomorrow we must get an early start, and I'm not going to wake anybody up. I'll just set out at dawn. Measures? Venez vite, said Veslovsky, coming in again. Charmante. I discovered her charmante, a perfect Gretchen, and we've already become acquainted. The prettiest little thing, really, he went on with an approving look, as if she had been made pretty especially for him, and he was pleased with the one who had done it for him. Levin pretended to be asleep, but Oblonsky, having put on his shoes and lit a cigar, left the barn, and the voices soon died away. Levin could not fall asleep for a long time. He heard his horses munching hay, then the host and his older son getting ready and going out to the night pasture. Then he heard the soldier settling down to sleep at the other end of the barn with his nephew, the host's smaller son. He heard the boy telling his uncle in a thin little voice his impression of the dogs, who seemed huge and fearsome to him. Then the boy asking him what the dogs would catch, and the soldier telling him in a hoarse and sleepy voice that the hunters would go to the marsh tomorrow and shoot off their guns, and after that, to have done with the boy's questions, he said, "Sleep, Vaska, sleep or else." And soon he was snoring, and everything quieted down. The only sounds were the neighing of horses and the croaking of snipe. Can it be only negative? He repeated to himself. Well, and what then? It's not my fault. And he started thinking about the next day. Tomorrow I'll go early in the morning and make it a point not to get excited. There's no end of snipe, and great snipe, too. I'll come back and there'll be a note from Kitty. Yes, maybe Steve is right. I'm not manly enough with her. I've gone soft. But what's to be done? Negative again. Through sleep, he heard Veslovsky's and Stepan Arkadyevich laughter and merry talk. He opened his eyes for an instant. The moon had risen, and in the open doorway, in the bright light of the moon, they stood talking. Stepan Arkadyevich was saying something about the girl's freshness, comparing it to a fresh, just-shelled nut, and Veslovsky, laughing his infectious laugh, repeated something, probably what the music had said to him. You get yourself one of your own. Levine murmured drowsily. "Tomorrow at daybreak, gentlemen," and fell asleep. If you've enjoyed this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.